Welcome to Sounding Board, which is a television program produced by Seroptimus International of Novato, which is a service organization whose mission is improving the lives of girls and women locally and globally through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. I'm Nancy Weber, and our guest today is Dee Johnson. She and I will be discussing Novato's efforts for recycling, hazardous waste management, and zero waste. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you, Nancy.
Let me give you a little bit of background about Dee. Dee is the household hazardous waste, which is commonly referred to as HHW, and zero waste program manager for the Novato Sanitary District since 1997. She manages the Novato HHW facility, manages state and federal grants, and administers Novato's zero waste programs, including public outreach, recycling, and compost programs. The sanitary district contracts with both solid and hazardous waste companies to perform the solid waste, recycling, and hazardous waste services for Novato residents. Prior coming to Novato, Dee had established the Marin County Waste Management Office as a result of Assembly Bill 939, which required all California jurisdictions to reduce their waste stream by 50% by the year 2000. Currently, Dee is also the Vice President of Marin County's local task force dealing with zero waste and also serves on the county Safe Medication Disposal Committee. So Dee, we hear a lot about zero waste today. So can you explain a little bit more about what zero waste actually is?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Nancy. So essentially, zero waste is the concept of sending nothing to the landfill. And it's also the concept of preventing waste, increasing our recycling and our composting programs. There's also another aspect to zero waste, which is the whole process that involves redesign of our systems and our operations to ensure that waste isn't produced in the first place. So although many people think that the concept of zero waste is impossible, the idea is to get as close as possible to putting as little as possible into the landfill. So within the state and county structures, there are several programs that are trying to achieve that. So back to, you mentioned AB 939, which was passed quite a few years ago by the state of California, and the concept of that was to reduce waste going into our landfill by 50% by the year 2000. Marin County and Novato achieved that goal, certainly by then. Since then, the state also passed a piece of legislation called AB 341, which requires a 75% reduction of waste going into our landfill by the year 2020. And in addition to that, there are some other programs that the state has done. Now, the county has taken a zero waste approach also, and their zero waste approach is to look at zero going into the landfill by 2025. And then the Novato Sanitary District, which franchises all the garbage and recycling within the city of Novato, put together a contract, a franchise agreement with our garbage hauler, Novato Disposal, several years ago, which required certain goals of meeting diversion. By 2016, 60% should be diverted from landfill. By I have to check my notes here, I'm sorry. By 2020, 70% is diverted, and by 2025, 80% is our goal to divert from landfill.
So how are we doing then? 2016, you'd mentioned the goal for 2016. Are we on track?
We're pretty well on track, yeah. So our numbers for the end of 2013, of which we have sort of the complete year number, was 59%. So more than likely our goal will be on track for the end of 2016.
And are the goals for Novato and Marin different? Are they similar?
They're, so the goals that are for Novato are not regulatory goals. They're goals that have been put into an agreement that both the district and the garbage company agreed to when they put their new franchise contract together, that they felt were achievable goals for reasonable and achievable goals for a period of time. The only regulatory goals that are to be met are the state goals. So the state, as I said, is looking for by 2020 a 75%, 2025 I believe it is, 75% reduction.
Okay, and so how can the residents help you, the residents of Novato and Marin?
Right.
What kinds of things can they do to help us reach the zero waste goal?
So there's lots of individual things that residents can do. So I talked a little bit about zero waste programs. So within sort of the scheme of things, one of the biggest zero waste programs that has been instituted over the last couple of years is food waste composting, and probably most people have learned about that over the last several years. It's quite exciting that instead of putting your food waste into your garbage in your landfill, you can now put it into your green can along with your green waste, and it will be sent off for composting. So that's a big program, not just for residences, which have been doing it for several years, but in particular for commercial facilities. So for restaurants and for supermarkets that have excess food and excess food waste, we'll be looking at increasing that. We're already doing that here in Novato, and they're doing it in other areas in Marin County. Certainly San Rafael is also, and we'll be looking to increase that even more. As a matter of fact, beginning in January of 2016, the state is requiring all commercial establishments who meet certain qualifications to recycle their food waste. So there will be some state regulation on doing that also.
Well, that's great.
The easy things that individuals can do, certainly in terms of waste prevention, one of our largest things is packaging. I think when we all go into a store and we see packages and packages and packages, and packaging can be very difficult to recycle because often it's plastic, paper, coated paper, different kinds of materials. Best thing you can do is try to buy in bulk. I was just at Whole Foods the other day and realizing it's an easy thing to do to try to buy a lot of things in bulk, as much as we possibly can. Bringing your own bag, great thing to do. Yes, paper's recyclable. The plastic bags are just not obviously a thing that we want to perpetuate. And we now have a bag ordinance here in Marin County, which is great. So continue to bring your own bag. That's a certainly simple thing to do. Reducing your food waste. I don't know if you've looked at statistics, but about a year ago, the Agriculture Department came out and said that 40% of our food produced in this country is wasted. It's actually wasted. It's not eaten. That's a lot of food waste. So try not to overbuy. Try to eat what you buy. And then certainly if you do have additional food waste, make sure you put it in your green can for composting and don't throw it in the trash.
The food waste is a very big issue. I know that restaurants, of course, have that as well. And I understand that the food bank is working closely with them for the food that is still edible,
Yes.
that they give that to people in need, and then the rest of it then would be going into recycling for the composting.
Exactly, and certainly looking at something like the Marin Food Bank is the clear choice of foods that are still edible, definitely. And many of the grocery stores do that right now. They work with the grocery stores. The food bank works with many of the grocery stores here in Novato and San Rafael to pick up edible food.
That's great. You also manage Novato's household waste, hazardous waste, HWW.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Sure. Household hazardous waste is, sometimes people ask, what is household hazardous waste? Essentially, the easy definition is it's anything, if you have a product and you see some caution words, and the caution words are things like toxic, flammable, corrosive. Any of those kinds of words on the product mean that it's a hazardous waste and should be brought to the household hazardous waste facility. Here in Novato, the household hazardous waste facility is located behind the Novato Recycling Center on Redwood Boulevard, and we're open 4 times a month. And we serve Novato residents. In San Rafael, the household hazardous waste facility that services all the other county residents here in Marin is located at Marin Sanitary Services on Jacoby Street in San Rafael. And those kinds of things that are brought into us are paints, pesticides, any kind of household toxic. things that sometimes people, and the list is growing because more and more things are being claimed to be hazardous. I have a little bit of a show and tell. Some of the things that have been claimed to be hazardous just over the last several years are these. And for people who probably know what this is, it's called a compact fluorescent bulb. Saves us a lot of energy, but unfortunately it has a hazardous constituent in it, which is mercury. So you want to make certain that if you, as these bulbs are disposed of, you don't throw them in your trash, that you bring them to the household hazardous waste facility, or the recycling center will take them every day they're open, or Peeney's Hardware here in Novato will also take them. Yes. So make certain that you recycle them and don't throw them in the trash. These bulbs, what we called old incandescent bulbs, which a lot of us still have, are not considered hazardous, and they're not recyclable. So they can just go in your trash. You don't need to put these in your recycling or bring them to the household hazardous waste facility. The other thing that has been over the last 2 or 3 years that is very big is household batteries. Everyone has household batteries. Regular old alkaline batteries, which are, we all have, which are just examples, are things like this, but these are lithium batteries. They're all recyclable. And some of the more unusual batteries, these are computer batteries, these are lithium batteries also. Make certain that you can bring these to either the recycling center, Novato Household Hazardous Waste Facility, or again, Peeney's Hardware will take these batteries also. So all kinds of household batteries need to be recycled here in California, including alkalines. And the other thing that is sort of new and expanded are electronics. So I think we all know that now that TVs and computer terminals and cathode ray tubes need to be recycled because they also have mercury in them. But in the state of California, essentially my reasoning, my definition is anything with a plug needs to be brought to either our e-waste event or the household hazardous waste facility. We're having an e-waste event in Novato. You'll see other e-waste events being posted around Marin County. Make certain that you recycle them properly, and we have a great recycler who does recycle them properly.
Your recycler, is that Novato Disposal, or?
So for our electronics, our recycler is a recycler called ECS. They are out of Central Valley in California. We made certain to contract with a electronics recycler in particular that is a member of what's called the e-Stewards standard. And the e-Stewards require certain audits of the recycling facilities. They ensure that nothing is shipped to China as a whole waste, and that the kinds of regulations that the state of California requires for recycling e-waste are followed. So we have always ensured that that's the case. I try to make certain and tell people that we've followed that. I can't guarantee that other recyclers that claim to pick up your e-waste recycling are always doing that.
You're
the
talking
curbside
about
things,
the curbside.
I just don't know whether they are. So if you want to ensure that it's being recycled properly, either bring it to the household hazardous waste facility or drop it off at our e-waste events.
And you said in Novato it's open 4 times a month?
Right. So in Novato, our household hazardous waste facility is open the first and third Sunday and Monday of every month from 8:30 to 1:30. No appointments required. Just come to the facility and you can drop off any of those things. And then this upcoming weekend, we're having an e-waste event. We have a couple of those a year. So, and we send out notices and newsletters about that. And as far as our contractor who handles our household hazardous waste, we contract specifically with a hazardous waste hauler to do that. It's actually a turnkey contract. Our people are trained in what's called 40-hour hazardous waste training. They know how to package. They know how to sort things so that everything is sorted into proper quantities and the proper disposal things. And what's very exciting about household hazardous waste is very little of it is brought to a hazardous waste landfill. Over 85% of what we get is either recycled. For example, all the latex paint we get in is recycled back into latex paint again. The oil-based paint we get in is sent to a cement kiln in Southern California, and it's used as an alternative fuel source. It has enough BTUs to be used as an alternative fuel source. So very little of what we get in, our batteries are recycled, the metals are recycled in all of our e-waste. So very little of what we get in, just about the only thing we get in that's really sent to a hazardous waste landfill is asbestos, and we don't get a lot of that in anymore.
That's great. It reminds me of the 3 R's: reduce, recycle, reuse.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
that's great, and gets us closer to our zero waste goal.
Yes, it does.
So what are some of the common questions you receive about household recycling and hazardous waste?
So as far as hazardous waste, I receive a lot of questions about batteries. And as I mentioned, all batteries need to be recycled here in the state of California, no matter what they are, whether they be lithiums, NiCads, lead acid batteries, alkaline batteries. And all of those can be dropped off at the recycling center or the hazardous waste facility or at Peeney's Hardware. I get questions about bulbs, I mentioned those, and because lots of times people think that incandescent bulbs can be recycled, they can't. At least we don't have any opportunity to do that now. And I get a lot of questions about e-waste. That's why I often say the easy definition is if it's got a plug, bring it to e-waste. People often aren't sure. Or if it's got a battery, because lots of times tools are battery operated, for example. So if they're battery operated, they're considered e-waste also.
And I know you brought as a sample the small light bulbs, but I at one time had long fluorescent light bulbs.
Yes.
And the very long tube-like ones, and you can take them to the recycling center.
Totally, yes. So those are the more common ones that we think of as fluorescents. And the other ones that you can actually bring to us, because we're getting more and more of them in now. Some people are switching out their fluorescent bulbs knowing they have mercury in them for LED bulbs. Now LED bulbs don't have a hazardous waste constituent in them, but we can recycle them. So they can also be brought to the recycling center. As far as recycling items, plastics are always a question. Essentially the recycling center and your curbside recycling will take just about any kind of plastic except for styrofoam. Styrofoam is not recyclable, and at least here in the community. And plastic bags or any kind of sheet plastic is not accepted in your recycling container. But essentially anything that, any plastic container that holds something, even hard plastic, which might be considered like a small plastic chair, like an outdoor chair, that's often considered a hard plastic item. That's recyclable, so that can be also recycled. Large items, often. People aren't quite sure what to do with a large item. So one of the things that here in Novato that our garbage company offers, Novato Disposal offers, is something called a bulky waste pickup. So 4 times a year for residences in Novato, if you as a resident contact Novato Disposal, they'll come and pick up a large item, a chair, a couch, even an appliance.
Without an additional charge.
Without an additional charge. So you get that 4 times a year. So that's very handy for people, for things that don't fit in your garbage can.
Right, because if you just place it outside on the regular pickup day, they may not take it unless...
They wouldn't take it unless you call and make special accommodations for it as part of the bulky waste pickup, correct.
Good. I also know, and I know you said you contracted with different companies, and so Novato Disposal, I think, has a very nice little container that you can put your batteries in that you're eventually going to recycle.
Right, so that came from the sanitary district,
Oh.
and so it was a small little plastic bucket that we put together. It actually is made out of 2 different kinds of recycled plastic, and we often hand those out at outreach when we do outreach, whether it be Art and Wine Festival here in Novato. We do a lot of outreach at that event or other kind of events. We've done farmers markets, and so we do hand them out there. Novato Disposal also provides, talking about buckets, food waste buckets,
Right.
composting food waste buckets, and so people love those. When food wasting first began here in Novato a couple of years ago, Novato Disposal gave those out for free to all residents. And now you can, if you want one or want another one, you can buy one at the recycling center for $6. They're very handy. You can put them on your kitchen counter, put your food waste into it, and then dump that into your green bucket. So that's really handy.
I do know that some cities allow you to use the disposable bags for your compost, but here in Novato, we don't.
Right. So that's actually the compostable bags and compostable compostable ware utensils are not considered compostable within our program here in Novato, nor actually most of the programs within Marin County. And that's really driven by where our yard waste and food waste is brought. So our yard and food waste is brought to the composting facility at Redwood Landfill. They do not want that material. They actually are certified as organic, and if in fact any kind of little, those things just don't break down enough. And so they don't break down fast enough. Small pieces of plastic are found in the material, and people who buy the compost don't want to see that, and so we ask that you not use that. Paper bags are fine. Line those little buckets with paper bags, or line a material with newspaper is fine, but not plastic.
So what do you think about the future? What does it hold for the products that we purchase today? How are they going to change to be more green-like?
Right. So I think that the whole concept of looking at how we move forward with recycling and waste reduction is really dependent not just on the consumer any longer, but on the producer and the manufacturer. So there's a concept that probably many people have heard of called EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility. And essentially what that means is that a production of a product is a shared responsibility, that the life cycle of the product is a shared responsibility between the manufacturer, the distributor, and the consumer. So a classic example of how that might work is how the state of California has dealt with paint over the last couple of years. We were able to put some legislation into place that required any manufacturer who sells paint, whether it be oil-based or latex paint, in the state of California, to take the paint back. And a organization was put together, an association of the paint manufacturers who sell paint in the state of California. They were able to put together an organization called Paint Care that, in fact, sets up disposal places. So in addition to the household hazardous waste facility, which will take your paint, now many paint stores in California will take your paint. So for example, here in Novato, Kelly Moore Paints is a place to drop off both your latex and oil-based paint for recycling. The program is funded by a small fee when you go and buy new paint. And all of that money, that small fee on your new paint that you purchase, is put in a fund that funds the pickup and disposal and recycling of old latex paint in California. It works incredibly well. And as a matter of fact, in terms of the future, we're looking at that same kind of process to happen for other hazardous waste and even some solid waste. So for hazardous waste, we're looking at it perhaps for batteries, for pharmaceuticals, and in terms of solid waste, for even things like packaging, which, as I mentioned earlier, is such a big problem in terms of packaging and a large part of our disposal problem. So we see EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, as really the way things will be headed in terms of different products and the way things will be moving ahead. And one thing I did want to mention was pharmaceuticals. Currently, we know that we certainly don't want anybody to dispose of their pharmaceuticals down the toilet or in the sink. Pollutes our groundwater.
Goes right to the bay.
Goes right to the bay. And here in Novato and in other communities, the police station has a drop-off site where you can drop off your prescription pharmaceuticals, just put them in a baggie, put them all in one baggie, and you can drop them off in the lobby here in Novato of the police department. The good news is also that on a local basis, Marin County was one of only 5, I believe, communities in the state of California that has put together a pharmaceutical take-back ordinance, which in a little bit less than a year from now will require any pharmaceutical company who is selling pharmaceuticals in Marin County to do a take-back program for pharmaceuticals, which may be very similar to the Paint Care program I mentioned to you.
Oh, that's great.
So that's very exciting, yes.
So it's great. So right now, you can take to the Novato Police Department,
correct,
but not necessarily to a Rite Aid or a CVR yet.
Unfortunately, no. and that will be up to whatever organization the pharmaceutical company has put together in terms of where their drop-off sites will be. It will be approved by the county, but it will be a very exciting program, and we're really looking forward to that.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you, Dee, for coming today and informing us. Is there anything else? We're wrapping up right now. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think if people want more information, they can go to websites. Novato Sanitary has a great website, www.novatosan.com, and Marin Sanitary Services has a great website about what they accept also.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Well, our program has come to an end today, so thank you to our audience for watching, and thank you again, Dee, our guest, Dee Johnson, our guest, and then, of course, the fabulous Seroptimus crew for filming and producing and directing. Thank you.